time to talk about it, I'm going to go through this week's material today because aesthetics is pretty quick. I think we can get through it in today's lecture. And then I'm going to spend Thursday talking about existentialism because that's a really fun topic and I don't want us to not have any time to talk about it together in class. Okay, so even though we're not covering existentialism until next week, please know that that's what we'll be talking about on Thursday of this week, right? Just because that's our last time together. All right, so I think, let's see, other upcoming deadlines. When is the final draft due? I mentioned that you have until June 17th for all late work, but when is the actual due date for the final draft? Who can remember? Final draft? This Friday? Is it due this Friday? No. Actually, it turns out I gave you until the very last day of the term. I gave you until Monday, June 17th. I didn't even give you until the Friday before. So you have until the very last day of the quarter to turn it in, okay? So lots of time to make up missing drafts, lots of time to make revisions. Again, hopefully most of that work has been done already, but if not, you've still got over a week to catch up, right? So plenty of time left. Okay, with that, I'm going to have us get started with our discussion on aesthetics. So I'm going to share my screen. Oh, no, let's do this first. Share screen. There we go. Okay, so let's see if I can do it this way. I don't like all these little bars. I don't know if I can move that. It's just right in the middle of my screen. Like, all right. So we're not going to do that because I can't both use that and talk to you guys. So I'm going to invite you to open up the lecture on your computers if you want to follow along. Otherwise, I'm going to be referencing certain slides. And if there are like useful diagrams, I'll jump back over to the PowerPoint. But basically, that's what I'm going to be going through today. And the idea is that it starts off with just another subset of terms, right? So we're further classifying this last section of philosophy. And again, since this is our last week together, let's just review all that we've learned, right? So at the very beginning of the term, we talked about the value of philosophy being found in the questions themselves, right? And exploring all the possible answers. And so some of the first questions that we asked were some of the ones I think most people ask themselves. And those had to do with religion, right? So we started off with philosophy of religion and then dived into a lot of specific areas of philosophy that philosophy of religion covered as well, right? So that it started off with metaphysics and epistemology, right? The study of the nature of knowledge. How do we know something rather than just believe it? And then what's real, right? And what are those real things like? How do we classify things? And then we moved into our final section, axiology, or the study of values, right? And so we started off with moral value judgments, right? That's what we spent the last 2 weeks covering. Okay, so we looked at different ways of making moral judgments, right? We can judge actions or we can judge agents, the people who engage in those actions. So now we're looking at non-moral judgments, right? So it's important to note that not all the types of judgments that we make have a moral weight to them, right? Not everything is good or bad or right or wrong, right? There are lots of things that we might consider to be amoral, meaning just without, right? It doesn't mean that they're immoral, right? A just meaning without, okay? Like being agnostic, we're not sure, okay? So amoral here, these are amoral judgments, but specifically, we're looking at amoral judgments that have to do with beauty. And as a result of that, we inevitably end up with discussions of art as well, right? So we're going to be discussing this week classifications, right, of judgments like whether or not something is beautiful, whether or not something is ugly, whether or not someone is attractive, whether or not something counts as a piece of art. And we want to talk about these things because there is a pretty, it's always controversial, but maybe it should be more controversial than it is. But there is often, in those who are interested enough, a debate about whether or not these claims are objective or subjective. What do I mean by that? I'm going to share the presentation and the power, and I'll share the link here too. It's linked in our Canvas module, but I'm going to share it here as well. So what do I mean when I say people, they debate whether or not judgments of beauty are objective or subjective? So if I say someone is beautiful, but I mean that is objective, what do I mean by that? That it's a fact. So what do we mean by a fact? All right, this is philosophy. It's never so simple an answer. What do we mean by this? And what do we mean by this? What is a fact?
If they have a different opinion.
Exactly. Right. So the idea here is that there is a fact of the matter in terms of its truth or falsity. Right.